Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So you need to run containers in Azure and you open the portal. 3 services: Azure Kubernetes Service, App Service, and Container Apps. Which one do you actually choose? I get asked this question constantly, and by the end of the video, you'll have a crystal clear decision framework that will save you hours of research and potentially thousands of dollars in the wrong choice. We are covering what each service actually is, comparing them across 5 key factors, and giving you that simple decision tree that you can use right now. So let's jump in. Before we compare them, let's get a crystal clear on what each of these services actually is. So they all run containers, but that's where the similarities end. Azure Kubernetes Service, or AKS, it's the Microsoft Managed Kubernetes platform. The keyword here is managed because Microsoft handles the control plane of Kubernetes, but you get full Kubernetes, all the power, all the flexibility, and also all the complexity. So you are choosing node sizes, configuring CNI, networking, managing namespaces, setting up ingress controllers. You need to know Kubernetes. The app service is the original platform as a service, and it's been around since day one. Recently, it added container support. You bring your container, Azure handles everything else. No Kubernetes, no node management, no cluster upgrades. Just here's my container, make it run. That's all. Finally, container apps. This is the newest player, launched in 2022, and under the hood is actual Kubernetes. But Microsoft abstracts all the complexity away. So you get modern features like Kata, autoscaling, Dapper integration without ever touching kubectl. So in a nutshell, AKS gives you full Kubernetes control, App Service has the simplest hosting option, and Container Apps give you Kubernetes benefits without the complexity. We are going to compare these services across 5 critical dimensions, which are the factors that actually matter when you are making a decision like this. Those are complexity and control. How much do you want to manage? Scaling capabilities. How does each handle traffic? Cost model. What will you actually pay for? The best use cases is what's each optimized for? And finally, developer experience, which is your day-to-day workflow. So let's break down each of one. Factor number 1, complexity and control. So this is probably the most important factor because, how much complexity are you willing to take on exchange for control? App Service has the lowest complexity. You just literally push a container and you are done. You don't have to manage pools. You don't need ingress controllers, no cluster management. Microsoft also handles the OS patching, scaling infrastructure and everything. But what is the trade-off? Limited control. You get what App Service offers. No custom networking configuration, no sidecar containers, and no advanced Kubernetes features. But for a lot of applications, I think that's totally fine. Container apps, it's the medium complexity because it gives you modern features without needing Kubernetes expertise. You work with revisions instead of pods. You configure scaling rules instead of pod horizontal autoscalers. Under the hood, it's Kubernetes, but you never touch kubectl. You never write YAML manifest. And finally, AKS, which is the highest complexity but gives you most control. AKS is full Kubernetes, period. You are choosing your node VM sizes, managing namespaces, configuring Azure CNI or networking, setting up ingress controllers, and much more. You have complete control over every aspect of your cluster. You want a service mesh? Configure it. You need custom admissions? Deploy them. Want a daemon set? Go for it. But, and this is critical, you need to know Kubernetes. You are responsible for cluster upgrades, understanding Kubernetes security, debugging pod issues, and so on. So the key question here is, do you need Kubernetes specific features or do you just need to run containers? Factor number 2, scaling capabilities. This is where things get really interesting, especially if you have variable traffic patterns. So for app services, you have traditional autoscaling rules. You set thresholds like at an instance when CPU hits 70% or when the queue of the HTTP is X. It works, it is predictable, but usually it takes 1 to 2 minutes to scale, and also you are paying for those instances 24/7, even when there is no traffic. And this is where container apps shine because it uses Kata, which is Kubernetes event-driven autoscaling, which means you can scale based on way more than just CPU and memory. You can scale based on HTTP requests per second, QDEF in Azure Service Bus, Cosmos DB change feeds, and a lot of other custom metrics from anywhere. And here's the game changer. You scale to 0. When there is no traffic, your app scales down to 0 instances, 0 cost. You only pay when requests are actively being processed. And finally, AKS. With AKS, you get everything. You get horizontal pod autoscaler, vertical autoscaler, cluster autoscaler for nodes, Kera if you install it yourself, and more custom metrics. You get maximum flexibility, but you are configuring it and managing it all yourself. You're writing YAMLs, testing thresholds, monitoring metrics, and so on. So for scaling, app service is simple but costly for variable workloads. Container apps has the best price to performance for most scenarios, and AKS gives you infinite flexibility if you need it. Cost model. Let's talk about money because the cost model are completely different for each service. For the app service, you pay for the app service plan, which is a compute tier where your app runs on. And here's the thing, you're paying 24/7 whether you have traffic or not. Container apps charges per virtual CPU. It's consumption based. Remember that it also can scale to 0, which means that you have $0 when it is idle. And finally, AKS, which you pay for the VM nodes running 24/7, the load balancer, disk storage, and bandwidth. And also something that is often overlooked is the engineering time managing it. So AKS is generally the most expensive option unless you are running many services on the same cluster. And bottom line, app service is simple but can be expensive. Container apps is usually the most cost effective. And AKS makes sense when you have a scale and multiple services. Factor 4, best use cases. So let's get specific when you actually use each one. So use app service when you have a traditional web app or a REST API, or you have applications built in .NET, Java, Node.js, Python, or PHP. Also, if your app need to run 24/7 with a steady traffic, that's a good choice. If you have teams without Kubernetes experience, this is also a best use case. And also a simple deployment requirements. For container apps, this is more than microservices, and you can choose when you have microservices architecture, of course, or event-driven applications, background job processing, API backends with variable traffic, applications also that benefit from scale to 0. And finally, AKS, which is a complex Kubernetes workloads. Use it when you need a service mesh like Istio, or you have multi-tenant application requirements. You also need a custom networking, for example, with Azure CNI. Finally, I think if you need a specific Kubernetes features like stateful sets, daemon sets, or custom operators, that's also a good option for this. So I think the key question here is match your requirements to the service strength, not the other way. Finally, factor 5 is developer experience. So let's talk about what it's actually like to work with each service day to day. App service has the smoothest developer experience because you can deploy directly from VS Code, from GitHub Actions, from Azure DevOps, Azure CLI, with minimal configuration. You just, for example, paste that Azure CLI and that's all. Your container is deployed and it generates also a URL. You have logs in Azure Portal, you have easy debugging, and even remote debugging support. So it just works. For container apps, it gives you modern experience without Kubernetes complexity. So you work with revisions, not pods. You can configure scaling rules, and also you get built-in Dapper support. Plus you get features like automatic revision management, also traffic splitting for AV testing. Finally, AKS, which gives you full Kubernetes mode, writing YAML manifest, using kubectl for everything, managing help charts, debugging pods with logs and execs, and so on. The learning curve is steep, but if you already know Kubernetes, you are at home. If you don't, so budget time for learning. So in summary, app service, click deploy, and you're done. Container apps, modern CLI revisions, solid developer experience. And with AKS, full Kubernetes, it's powerful, but it's also complex. All right, let's make this practical. So here's your simple decision framework. Let's start with this question, which is, do you already have Kubernetes expertise and need Kubernetes specific features? If so, then go with AKS. You know what you're doing, you need that control. No? Then let's go to the next question. So do you have variable traffic or need a scale to 0 to save costs? Yes, then go to container apps. And if not, then let's one more question. Is this a traditional web app or API that runs pretty much 24/7? If your answer is yes, then go with app service. Simple, reliable, perfect for the steady workloads. If not, then still go with container apps, which is the modern default. So a quick reference is just run my app, go with an app service, modern microservices, variable traffic, choose container apps. And if you want full Kubernetes control, choose AKS. So before we wrap up, let's save you from some common mistake I see all the time. So the first one is choosing AKS when you don't need it. Don't pick AKS just because everyone uses Kubernetes. The operational overhead is real. Pitfall 2, which is not considering a scale to 0. If your application is idle 70% of the time, container apps with a scale to 0 can literally save you thousands of dollars per year compared to app service. So do the math before you decide. Underestimating app service limitations. So app services doesn't support sidecar containers, complex networking scenarios, and certain advanced container features. So make sure it actually supports what you need and don't assume. And finally, assuming that container apps is equal simple AKS. Container apps is not a learning platform for Kubernetes. It abstracts Kubernetes away entirely. So if you want kubectl access and to learn Kubernetes, use AKS. So that's all. Let's do a quick recap of what we just saw. So we compared 3 services, AKS, app service, and container apps across 5 key factors: complexity and control, the scaling capabilities, cost models, best use cases, and developer experience. And here's your takeaway. App service is the simplest path for traditional apps running 24/7. Container apps is modern default for most scenarios, specifically with variable traffic. And AKS when you actually need full Kubernetes. So if this helped you make a decision, please leave a like button and subscribe. See you soon.